Okay, guys, if you're standing up, make sure you go ahead and sit down for a little second while listening to this video because I think a lot of stuff is happening right now which is going to be changing our lives forever and ever and ever, and it's happening right in front of our eyes. Okay, today we're going to be going over quite a couple of really important parts of our future, or really more so the now even. Some stuff that's happening is completely insane, and today I want to talk with you guys more about that. So make sure, guys, that if you want to enter into our 250 XRP giveaway, that you press the like button, subscribe, and comment something down below. We give that away every time we hit 1,500 likes in 24 hours. But also just help me out for the algorithm by pressing the like button. All right, having said that, I've been talking to you guys for a couple of days about even a couple of months actually, about the replacement of the US dollar. We've talked about this for a very good while, you guys all know it. However, it really didn't get too serious until, of course, the pandemic came around, and really now that 5G war has been won by China, and now that China has actually come out with their digital yuan and is actually winning that race as well, that's really when things started to get a little bit heavier, or a little bit more apparent at least. Let's read this article real quick. Bitcoin is a warning to government money printers, Morgan Stanley executive says. The bank's head of emerging markets and chief global strategist said that Bitcoin has the potential to replace the dollar. And even though I don't necessarily want to involve you guys too much with Bitcoin replacing the dollar, there are some ideas as to why Bitcoin is really, really bad for the US dollar, and how theoretically a coin like XRP could be replacing it. But more on that will come up here in a second. Let's move on to the next article just to kind of solidify the idea. Here is once more why Bitcoin will replace the US dollar as the world's reserve asset. And what's kind of going on? What's a little bit of a trend that's going around right now? Well, it has a lot to do, I personally think, with quantum financial systems, Nasara, Gasara, all of that stuff right now that's really being broadcasted time upon time upon time. And let's read the title here. China stakes its claim to quantum supremacy. Google trumpeted its quantum computer that outperformed a conventional supercomputer. A Chinese group says it's done the same with different technology, which is strange because you would think it would be kind of on the same line if they were to be so far on the same level, but I guess it's something different. And then digital asset investor DAI kind of put this together with Dr. Nairi Usher, who's working at Flare, and he's the chief scientist over there, and he was previously a postdoctoral researcher in quantum machine learning, UCL, worked in collaborations with Siemens on applications of quantum algorithms to healthcare and image recognition. And of course, the connection that you can kind of fetch from all of this as well, Flare knows about this, what's been happening and what's going on, and they're prepared for it, and at least they're working on something. Is it a coincidence that these guys are together? Yeah, most likely. However, is it kind of interesting as well? Yes, it is, because, well, you would kind of think if he's the chief scientist over at a project like that, which is also involved with crypto, which has often been said to be replacing the world reserve currency, you would kind of think that they would be prepared for it, right? And do it better, or at least build something on top of XRP which is resistant to any of that. Because the thing you need to know about any of these systems, actually, there's two things most importantly. One, if we're talking about those names I've said before, the Nasara Gasara stuff, I don't want to say it out loud too much because I don't think the algorithm really likes it when you dive deep into stuff like that. Even this video is kind of risky, I kind of think, but I had to make it for you. The stuff that kind of is being talked about there is a gold standard, right? We all know it. In crypto, it's a very popular thing to talk about a gold standard and how that's going to be flowing in. And of course, the other important or cool part about it is the fact that quantum computing is going to eventually get rid of Bitcoin and break the system, or of course, force upon us a new rule of of freaking supremacy by the country that gets the computer done the fastest and the best. Again, quantum computers have sort of skills. I don't even know what the official name is for those skills and how you measure how good they are. And to really crack Bitcoin, of course, we still got a couple of years to go, but it is coming. And thus, with this idea in the back of our heads, and again, we kind of have two things: a gold standard to erase the debt, and of course, a quantum financial system to, I guess, break the whole system once more. Bitcoin replacing the US dollar is kind of vague. It really doesn't work that well. However, to a certain degree, a lot of these things are kind of talking or thinking about Bitcoin acting as a gold 2.0, which a lot of people said is true, to then also act as the gold in a golden standard, but then, of course, Bitcoin as a gold 2.0. So let's read this article here. Why Bitcoin replaces the US dollar as the world's reserve asset is much a story of the United States dollar as it is of Bitcoin. It started when the United States GDP was a third of the world's GDP and even larger when it comes to the manufacturing sector at the close of the second WW. World Economic Report 1948 had a separate section on economic activity in the United States and other sections for the rest. Several factors in this era led to the emergence of the United States dollar as the world's reserve currency. We've on this channel covered this specific subject quite often. As I've said before, world reserve currency are mostly there for about 95 years, and right now the US dollar has been the one for about 100 years, so it's already overdue, so to speak. It can, however, I think the minimum was about 80 and the maximum was about 120. To go on though, while USD was backed by gold reserves, the rest of the world's currencies were backed by their exchangeability into US dollar. US dollar was the glue connecting nation states with each other through their trade and exchange, and the most popular medium of exchange remained foreign reserves in US dollar. Another fun idea to check about that one is foreign reserves, right? How does that become interesting into the equation? Well, if you believe into some of these XRP theorists and XRP being a world reserve asset and stuff like that, a lot of the things they talk about is, I guess let me name up version 1. One is XRP becomes the digital world reserve currency. Why? Well, because Brad Garlinghouse has admitted in videos that it's huge amount of coins and the quote unquote lower price has been designed this way to act as one. He said that. You can check out my Twitter. If you scroll down a little bit or even check out earlier videos, you'll see he admitted that in like a Korean-ish setting or conference. I don't know exactly which one. And the second part about it is they're planning to get rid of reserves, basically, right? Or at least to make foreign reserves, I should actually say, a thing of the past. Since if you can instantly switch over your currency to another one, why would you keep reserves in another country or from another currency in that sense? It's something that's really going to be put into the background as Ripple rolls through and XRP grows and grows and grows. We saw a little bit earlier, 20% of RippleNet is already ODL. And I don't know how much money they're really pushing through there, but it's going to be getting bigger. We all know it. 2021 is going to be their year. However, with that in our back pockets and with that idea in mind, gold standard or system of backing money supply with gold was dropped in 1971. And ever since then, a lot of guys have said through that, again, I'm not going to say the name out loud again, you guys know what I'm talking about, that it was already kind of put up to put it back in. And again, what's been coming up right now the last couple of weeks really is Bitcoin being that standard instead of gold, literally. But let's move on though. Though this change was meant to be a temporary one, which was definitely interesting, it lasted longer than the gold standard did, and despite that, US dollar did not lose its status as a reserve. Its runner-up was the euro, and even before the speculation of Bitcoin dethroning US dollar as a reserve currency started, the 2008 financial crisis laid the foundation for the same. One after the other, several events raised questions on the efficiency of the US dollar as the world's reserve, with a rapidly increasing money supply, fiscal and trade deficits, and a slowing economy, which are all true still as of this point today. Rapidly increasing money supply, we saw that with the stimulus is being put in. Fiscal and trade deficits, that one we don't really need to talk about. I mean, you already, the trade deficit, I guess, or the trading problems can already be seen with the US-China problem and the war between trading. That can be easily identified. And the slowing economy, once more, the China situation, but also the fact that a lot of other economies that were emerging for the longest time, like China, right now have actually really started to up their game and are doing quite good. And even though the US is still, in my opinion, the forefront of everything, they're kind of losing their grip piece by piece. We're all noticing that. And I still, as I said before, think they're number one in almost everything. And they might stay that way for a very long while, don't get me wrong. They are slipping away a little bit. We saw that as well with 5G and now again with the CBDC. The question though, how can it still manage to be the world reserve currency of the world? To pave way for Bitcoin to be the global reserve currency, it had to inevitably dethrone the dollar, which is something that people have said has already happened. Here is US debt to GDP versus M2 velocity, so the money supply 2. Basically, if you have had economics, it's going to be a lot easier to understand this, but otherwise just type in M2 or or just banking system and get how that works, if we have to explain the entire banking system with reserves and how central bank operates, it's going to be an hour-long video. So please check it out for yourself exactly how M2 works. Based on the trend of increasing federal debt versus dropping M2 velocity, US dollar is ideally not ready to compete with gold or Bitcoin in the first place. Near zero interest rates and inflation have plagued the reserve currency of the world. An interesting question here is, could this be the reason why central governments across the world are considering the alternative of CBDCs to compete with the alternative economy created by cryptocurrencies? The path to being a reserve currency is to be the currency used in global trade. And to say the least, global trade has changed 360 degrees since the Second World War. We all know that. And trade in its essence has changed. Ships and ports are no longer the only means of trade, and there are more cross-border exchanges through online payment transfers than ever before. And one very interesting and key insight here is that local payment methods are dominating payment networks in global markets, which are funny because you would kind of say that that's not the case. And because cash is really leaving the era, right? I mean, cash is something of the past, I kind of find. I like cash a lot. I'm a man that keeps a couple bucks on him all the time. I would always do that. I'm not going to change at all. And I think a lot of you guys are with me on that one, that it just cash feels more real, even though it's still a made-up construct. It's still plastic or just paper. It's really stupid. It just even feels more real than having money in my bank account, right? Because that number, if one guy behind his computer is like, oh, you know what, let me change that 1 to a 0, I'm broke. You guys get the picture? And if you have those bills in your hand, at least it doesn't feel that way. I mean, if they decide to collectively say, okay, this is worth nothing anymore, then okay, you're still broke. But it's you have it in your own control, it kind of feels like, even though, I mean, I know it's not completely true. And by the way, if you're hearing things, it might be fireworks, it might be a freaking, I don't know, whatever they're doing outside, but it's being pretty crazy right now with all the sounds. And a lot of these booms right now, it's going completely insane. But also some things have been, lit up in the last couple of days around this area. So I don't know what is happening exactly, but if you don't hear from me tomorrow again, you bet your ass something happened, all right? Just kidding, guys. I do, the thing I said was true, but I don't think anything is going to happen. One very interesting and key insight here is that local, as I said before, is dominating, which is interesting if you take a look at the statistics here. Payment networks are actually better in North America, and even for a small part Latin America, because I think a lot of them are sending money back there. But in general, in Western Europe and Asia, local is good, and that's actually a kind of a bad thing for XRP. The good thing about it is, even though Ripple has said before that 95% of the customers are not from the US, I kind of feel as if they were from the US, they would have a lot of money, to get, because I think from the US to Mexico, there's a lot of money being sent in the US to China, US to Philippines, US to everywhere that people have migrated from over these years. They're just sending a lot of money back if they found something, right? I mean, of course, they're doing that in Europe too, and in Asia and Latin America, they're doing everywhere. But I also think there's actually a huge market for that in America, but apparently that's not as big of a deal. And this article, by the way, goes on for just a little bit more. Again, there's not too much stuff. In this case, if Bitcoin was used as a local payment method, it wouldn't be long before it moves on to be accepted as a reserve currency, which to a certain degree would be possible, to a certain degree definitely wouldn't. And that's why sometimes I'm saying better to kind of think about this as an XRP standard rather than Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, if you don't know the creator, you're definitely not going to accept it as your currency because there is one guy with 1 million of them, which you can't really trust. And I kind of also feel as if since these guys like Grayscale, Square, and PayPal are already buying so much, it's going to be very difficult for a government or anybody like that to really accept this happening, or even for G7 or anything like that to say like, okay, let's keep this going, let's accept it. The more reasonable thing to happen is if there were to be a new currency made by this conference, which I still think is very difficult. But then again, we're looking at a one world currency in that sense happening, which is still a very small chance because who would control it? Who would make choices about the money supply? Who would make choices about the conversion, so to speak, and everything like that? It's all has to be decided with all these people together, which is almost impossible, right? Or you'd have to have one central authority, ranging it all. But then again, you would have to get rid of all these other currencies almost instantly because this currency is going to have so much control over the other ones that you cannot have one person from a specific country in this council, if you guys get me, right? It has to be either split up into every single country being represented in there, or maybe, just every major currency country being represented. Otherwise, you're always going to have this unfair advantage or doubt because this currency is just very, very hard to move. And with Bitcoin in that sense, and coins that have never really had a central authority, and even XRP even, what you might say has been made by Ripple and is from Ripple, it's actually not completely that way. It was actually made first before it was given away. And to a certain degree still, it's decentralized, so that doesn't really matter. I kind of feel like things like that are a lot easier to get through, so to speak, because, well, if you think about it logically, they don't really have a creator like that. And they don't really have this ruling where some country, like all of them have to be represented in that sense, because you can just pick a couple as G20. You can be like, okay, let's hold some auditions or whatever auditions, these guys just dancing around. No, I'm just talking about they can hire some people for those jobs and roles because it's decentralized anyway, so nobody has a better benefit necessarily, right? In that sense then. With that idea in mind, man, cryptocurrencies, or at least a currency that's really not man-made, at least knowing to men, is actually a lot better than the reserve currency that we have right now. And the chances of it happening are a lot bigger since they gotta find some way to get rid of debt. And the thing is, if you denominate everything in Bitcoin from this point on forward, and the governments were to go on heavy into buying the crypto first, like Grayscale and stuff like that are doing, you're gonna make yourself a lot of money. We all know that, right? And the thing is it gonna be Bitcoin? Well, I would say it cannot really be so, but is Bitcoin a very big kind of freaking, I don't know, heavy weight on US dollars just outlined for the future? Yes. And if you kind of think about it a little bit more further, there's one thing, and that is that the whole situation about quantum is pushing and pressuring Bitcoin, whilst Bitcoin is pressuring the US dollar, right? And on top of all of that, of course, is the gold standard, which people are talking about, which is again being kind of talked about in the sense of Bitcoin. So that whole circle kind of goes around where there's not really a good option, there's not really a bad option, as they're all both. I mean, if the US dollar stays on top, it's kind of good, because that means not that much change, not that much panic, not that much new people that turn poor really quickly because things change, which is going to lose a lot of people their jobs. On the contrary, a gold standard could take or get rid of a lot of debt. However, it would also have countries very confused, and a lot of countries have more power than you would actually like, which is also not that nice. On another end, we don't know how scarce gold actually is and how the space mining is going to be coming along. And in that sense, if we talk about Bitcoin not being gold, you have the scarcity set in place. However, the quantum computing that's coming around could actually break it all. And thus, if you start to roll that ball around a little bit, XRP does make a lot of a better idea. However, as of how it stands right now, the only kind of big option they have is to sell all the XRP that Ripple has through OTC sales to governments and stuff like that to have their reserves in XRP and then announce the world reserve currency. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. However, the thing that's kind of contrasting in my own mind is if Brad Garlinghouse has said, we have gotten a huge amount of coins with a lower price because we want it to be more like a world reserve currency, I kind of question exactly how much it would be worth in dollars and if we can even talk about the dollar value. Right, we have those articles, and I'll talk a little bit later about them saying XRP to $10,000 and stuff like that. But the question in my mind, which is I think very important, is, well, if it really becomes the world reserve currency, of course they're going to give their XRPs to some governments, maybe akin to how much their GDP is or something like that, or maybe how much their debt is to kind of, put it together again. I don't really know exactly how they're going to go about that. It doesn't really matter. The point is, what is going to happen to these other currencies which are out there, which sort of have to become obsolete piece by piece with XRP as a world reserve currency? Because, well, you're going to have the US dollar, but it's going to lose so much of its value if it's not the world reserve currency anymore. And really, our whole standard is so messed up that I think a huge inflation kind of wave may also happen where, in general, just people really don't want their dollars anymore. So they're going to demand more dollars for anything they're doing, right? They don't really want dollars that much anymore. So they want more, which is going to bring inflation to the battle, which is going to put all these prices a lot higher, which again makes those 10,000 XRP questions a lot more normal. Because in the current situation, guys, if everything pulls through like it is right now, XRP will most likely never see $10,000 per coin. However, the thing is, if hyperinflation does come like a lot of people have predicted, then, well, those odds are increased by quite huge margins. And the fact that China is right now pushing as well with their CBDC and their currencies towards an end of the US dollar dominance, it's all becoming more apparent that the SEC, like we've talked about a little bit earlier here, is also, waiting for something bigger to happen. These guys know as well as we do that some stuff is moving around right now, and they gotta make some choices quickly, all right? And by the way, it's not like there's just one article based upon this. It's not like there's just one guy talking about XRP being a world reserve currency. There's a ton of them. All right, this one was posted. Wait, what? It's posted 2 years ago, Redditor for 8 months. That's kind of strange how that exactly works. However, there's a lot of these guys talking about the situation and how it can change in the oil war and yada, yada, yada. Again, you can check this stuff out for yourself. Just check out here and explain why this could be the case and why it's been made this way. You can go into a little bit deeper on the, this side, which we're not going to name out loud here to make sure that this video can stay up. But even though I'm not quite sure that XRP will actually get there, those theories about the systems, they do kind of come together in a certain way, right? And here, let's quickly read this little part here, which is also very interesting. XRP new world currency? Interestingly, there is a cryptocurrency which is decentralized but controlled by private entity and trying to solve a real problem, i.e. sending money between countries seamless, real-time, transparent, and dirt cheap. It's replacing SWIFT, the old payment rail for petrodollar. SWIFT was designed 40 years back. With SWIFT system, trillions of dollars are stuck with banks doing nothing much, which will be released once Ripple replaces SWIFT. Again, that part is partially true. Not all the money within banks, of course, but a good part. Already people in Japan and South Korea, Singapore, USA, Australia, and UK have started to use XRP as a payment method in day-to-day transactions, and XRP has the potential to be currency of every denizen of planet Earth. Already central banks and monetary authorities tripping over each other to integrate Ripple. Not completely true either. To a certain part, yes. To a certain part, no. I mean, we are still waiting for the bigger regulatory approval, which Ripple and XRP have gotten in certain countries, but not everywhere just quite yet, which is why they, of course, aren't expanding too much just quite yet. However, you can kind of throw that theory back and forward about why this is being done. Some people are saying cryptocurrency has not been regulated because they are not building their own CBDC properly just quite yet, and they want to make sure that if they regulate cryptocurrencies, it also applies to their CBDC in a positive sense. However, they did come out with the Stable Act kind of regulating all these stable coins, so that's not what they want. They don't want a stablecoin out there. And again, creating a stablecoin has a lot of chores attached to it as well, which wouldn't just properly work because a stablecoin would have to be backed on something, which ultimately then again would either be XRP, maybe a stablecoin based upon XRP, a stablecoin backed by gold, a stablecoin backed by Bitcoin. But again, all the previous disadvantages we talked about would still remain because it couldn't be based upon the US dollar. If it's a stablecoin based by US dollar, your whole system goes wild again because, well, the US dollar is the thing that's being replaced. And if you create a stablecoin based on US dollar, you achieve nothing. You just have another CBDC or maybe even just a normal currency like the US dollar, but then online. So you really did nothing in that whole roundabout. So your only then option would be either a world reserve a one world currency once more, or again, another standard as the bottom. And the thing why this is so important is because the debt is going up and up and up, and there's really no easy fix for it anymore. At least the further we go on, the harder it's going to get. Ripple has a holistic solution to be a global liquidity provider and has been making right moves with IMF, World Bank, and central banks, authorities and regulators through the world, and slowly and steadily its progress is on course. XRP is set to become the new world order, international currency, and at last, money is changing and will change so fast that you would not even realize that everything changes as it happened with photography. Future is not seen with eyes, but an inquisitive mind. The important part about this one is, even if changes like this do happen, we most likely won't even see it at the start. We'll most likely see it a couple years after it has already occurred, because these talks and these votes and stuff like that, these are so important. They happen in private. All right, these things are being discussed in private meetings, not open. If the SEC is talking about this, or G7, G20, this is being done on the low with us not there, and thus it could, theoretically speaking, be they already discussed it, but it's just not been made public. It's definitely possible. Then, again, Mark Phillips, we've talked about this one quite often. XRP will be the world reserve currency, and this whole article is talking about XRP being the $10,000 behemoth because of the national debt, which, by the way, if you check the numbers right now, has increased hugely for US. It's been completely crazy how this has been moving up. And again, I kind of am against the whole idea that this is a possibility of XRP being 10,000 with a normal system. And even if it's a world reserve currency, then why would you not say the other way around, that one one XRP, the other way around? No, I guess it kind of works. Because if the reason you should say it differently or the other way around is like, you shouldn't be valuing XRP in US dollars, but you should be valuing your US dollars in XRP. So it's like $10,000 will be worth 1 XRP, so to speak, because again, the US dollar, if this whole system were to come through, would be obsolete, or at least would be very, very low in comparison to relativity that it has today. And all of this is mostly built upon the idea that they have to pay off debt. And every Nassar system and stuff like that, they all base it upon a gold standard, which again would be Bitcoin, because that's gold 2.0, which is a better one. And again, that Bitcoin can be kind of messed up at the quantum system. So again, then we would have to go to maybe like Ethereum or XRP to make it proper, because a stablecoin wouldn't work, because what would you base the stablecoin upon? And again, the other option I can think about is a world reserve currency, which is a one world currency. Then here, dependent, could a new world reserve currency or world digital currency come from Silicon Valley? That's one thing that's actually not completely disclosed or completely official or done. Since, again, my discussion, like I just posted it up right now, is still one that's kind of a difficult one, right? You would say that right here at the bottom, a fixed supply, which things like XRP and Bitcoin have, make it impractical as a world reserve currency. I do get that, right? They say that since demand would far outstrip supply of Bitcoins, adopting it as a global reserve currency would mean permanent deflation, which I do get, and I do think is true, which again, in a certain system wouldn't really work properly. On the contrary, all these economical constructs which we have today, they're based upon, at least for a huge part, on John Locke and stuff like that. All these theories that have been built for, let's say 2-3 centuries ago, maybe even 4. And the fun part about them is that new constructs and new bigger macroeconomical theories come out every single day. At least people are going at this every single day for 6, 7, 9 hours a day, talking and thinking of them. And it's only after they have been really talked about for years and discussed for years that somebody's like, whoa, this might actually work. And then funny enough, it's already being put into play. And funny enough, after a couple of years, maybe even decades, you notice that this one guy has published this a couple of years earlier and said this could work. And there were a lot of guys who said this couldn't work, yada, yada, yada. So to kind of summarize that, it could. We could get a completely different system in place and it could work. However, it's something that's really unfathomable to most of us just quite yet, or unfathomable. I don't know what it is in English. However, it's possible and it may be happening. Again, this one was just the same. And guys, make sure you check out Webull. If you're from the US, grab yourself some free stocks on here. If you make an account, you get 2 free stocks. If you put in $100, you get 2 more free stocks. Not financial advice, just for fun. Check it out. And yeah, the story I think is straight. I have to go drink some water because we've been talking for like 30 minutes or so, completely crazy. But this has been on my mind for a little while. I think a lot of people have had this on their mind and have been thinking about this. So let me know in the comment section down below what you think about it. And a little bit later today, I'll be talking more about some Reddits that I found and I think are worth discussing and going over. But in general, yeah, you can definitely say I am pretty bullish on XRP. I do think there's a possibility for it to take over. I do think it would completely change our market, a complete perception of the world economy that we have today, and it probably wouldn't be Bitcoin, not even a gold standard, and a couple of those other things wouldn't really work properly, like stablecoins. But I don't really see any reason why XRP couldn't work. I don't really see any good reason why it couldn't work. And if we would be rich, if we held it now, if it were to be adopted, yes, definitely so. I mean, if it were to really pull through, you would kind of have to think about the scarcity that it's going to create, right? Because it would be permanently deflationary, which is good and bad at the same time. It has both of them. I mean, deflationary in this sense just means like 1 XRP will just be worth more and more and more in other currencies, so to speak. And you'll just, at one point your bread is like 1 XRP. After a little other while, it's like a half XRP and so forward and so on, which is kind of strange though, because your money that you're going to be given for your work, for example, at first is just like, oh man, I got 100 XRP. And then after a while, it's like, oh man, I got 50 XRP for my work and stuff like that. Of course, maybe the purchasing power will stay the same, but that depends on the whole construct. Same, I guess, and funny, the contrast can be made with the mining rewards, right, which are also deflationary. But yeah, that was it for today. Hopefully you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys again in another crypto video. It was a deep one, a long one, but I think it was a fun one.